For thousands of years, these massive carvings in the cliffs of ancient Persia, they've been holding on to a secret. See, they're not just tombs. They're actually proclamations, messages from some of the most powerful rulers in history, literally speaking to us across 2,500 years. And today, you know it, we're going to decipher them. So, check this out. This is Naqsh-e Rustam, in what's now Iran. It's a royal necropolis, basically a city of the dead. And what's wild is that these huge facades, they aren't buildings. Nope, they're carved directly out of the mountainside. I mean, think about that feat of engineering. It just makes you wonder, right? Who could possibly command such a monument? And what on earth did they want to tell the world? All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get a feel for the sheer scale of this place. Then, we'll figure out who these royal residents were. After that, and this is the cool part, we'll decode the king's actual words, find out about the crazy risks people took to read them, and finally, uncover the timeless message they left for all of us in the stone. Okay, first up, let's try to wrap our heads around the pure audacity of this project. Seriously, it's hard to overstate the ambition we're looking at here. The cliff face itself is described as being almost perfectly straight up and down, rising to a height of nearly 300 yards. Can you just imagine trying to carve these super intricate designs into a rock wall that high and with only the tools they had back then? It's just staggering to think about. And this picture, wow, it really drives the point home, doesn't it? This isn't stone stacked on top of stone like a regular building. No, this is the mountain itself, literally hollowed out and sculpted. The goal here wasn't just to build a tomb. It was to create a permanent piece of the landscape, a memorial that was designed to last forever. So, the big question, who were these tombs for? Well, this was the final resting place for the kings of the Achaemenid Empire, which, by the way, was the largest empire the ancient world had ever seen. And what I find so fascinating is the contrast here. You know, on one hand, you have this awe-inspiring, massive scale of the whole site. But then you look closer at the detailed drawings, and you see this incredible, fine architectural detail. It was meant to be both a huge public spectacle and a deeply personal monument. The overall shape of each tomb kind of looks like a cross. The bottom part is left smooth, but the middle part, that's where you find the actual entrance, almost like a doorway to a grand palace. And then the top section is this huge carved relief, a whole scene showing royal power and divine approval. It's a complete story, right there in the stone. But you know, the carvings are really only half the story. The real treasure here is the text that's etched right alongside them. It's a voice speaking directly from the past, just waiting for someone to listen. Okay, look closely at this relief. What do we see? There's a king standing on a platform that's being held up by figures representing all the different nations he conquered. He's gesturing towards a fire altar, a symbol of his faith, and floating above him is this divine figure basically giving him the celestial thumbs up. The question is, who is this king? Well, the inscription gives us the answer. For centuries, nobody could read cuneiform. It was a total mystery. But once they cracked the code, early scholars transcribed the first few lines into Latin. And this is what they read. Okay, translated, it says, "A great God is Ahura Mazda, who created this earth, who created that sky, who made Darius king." Boom. It's a declaration of faith and power. The speaker is identifying his god, Ahura Mazda, as the creator of everything, and the one who personally appointed him, Darius, as the king. We're talking about Darius the Great, one of the most famous rulers in all of history. Oh, but he doesn't stop there, not even close. He wants to make his status crystal clear. The proclamation continues, making what has to be one of the boldest claims of power you will ever read. "I am Darius, the great king, king of kings." I mean, come on, this wasn't just some fancy title. For him, it was a statement of fact. He ruled over this gigantic, multicultural empire, and he wanted eternity, and us, to know it. He's basically carving his own permanent resume right into the side of a mountain. And just get a load of this list of provinces he claims to rule. We're talking Media and Babylonia, through Egypt and Arabia, all the way to parts of Ionia and modern-day Turkey, and even India. The geographical scope is it's breathtaking. But, you know, knowing what these inscriptions say is one thing. How in the world did we learn it? Well, the story of how they were deciphered is a real adventure in its own right, and it was filled with some incredible danger. Early explorers who wrote about the experience, they had this sense of dread.
Local legends often described these tombs as, and I'm quoting here, demon-wrought places. So there was a real fear and superstition around them, which only made the whole thing even more perilous. The process was absolutely terrifying. Just to reach the inscriptions, these explorers had to climb a 60-foot-high cliff face. They were literally hauled up by a single rope, scrambling up the rock, as one of them put it, like a rat hanging by a wall. And all the while, they were getting bruised and battered by the unforgiving stone. Just awful. So the knowledge that we kind of take for granted today, it was earned through huge personal risk. These weren't just scholars sitting comfortably in a library. They were adventurers putting their lives on the line just to hear the voices of the past.
So let's bring it all together. What is the ultimate message that Darius wanted to leave behind? For his people, for his God, and, well, for us.
For the people who first saw these inscriptions, they were like a sealed book, a tantalizing puzzle that, if they could just unlock it, promised to explain everything about this lost empire. And what did it reveal? It was basically this, a three-part proclamation. First, a declaration of his divine right to rule, something given to him by his god, Ahura Mazda. Second, a laundry list of his worldly accomplishments, the huge empire he controlled. And third, a moral instruction. And that final instruction is surprisingly simple and direct. After listing all his power and glory, his final command for the future is a moral one. Do not leave the right path. Do not rise in rebellion. It's really a plea for order and for justice, meant to echo down through the ages. And that kind of brings us to a final thought. Darius used his immense power to carve his legacy into a mountain for all time. It really makes you wonder, right? If you had that same power, that same kind of permanence, what single message would you leave behind for the future to find?